The evening sun was dipping behind a line of glass-fronted buildings when the parking lot outside the upscale event began to fill. A row of gleaming luxury cars rolled in one by one, Lamborghinis purring, Bentleys gliding like silent ships, and black sedans delivering guests in designer suits and flowing gowns. Valet attendants moved with rehearsed grace, opening doors, collecting keys, offering polite smiles to the arriving elite. The air buzzed with laughter and low conversations, the kind shared by people who believed they belonged among the city's most important names. Then, breaking through the hum of expensive engines came the throaty rumble of something different, a sound that made heads turn not because it was loud, but because it was out of place. A motorcycle, old enough to look like it had lived a dozen lives, rolled gently across the polished asphalt. Its paint was faded in places. A few scratches along the side told quiet stories of distant roads. The rider sat tall and steady, wearing worn black boots, dark jeans, and a plain jacket that bore the creases of years rather than the stiffness of a runway piece. As he pulled into a space near the entrance, his helmet gleamed softly under the amber lights. Some guests paused mid-step, their eyes drawn not by recognition but by curiosity. A machine like that didn't belong in a line of flawless supercars, and the man dismounting from it didn't fit the evening's polished uniform. He removed his gloves slowly, as if unhurried by the world around him, and lifted the helmet from his head. Long dark hair fell past his shoulders, catching the light, framing a face with a scruffy beard and calm, thoughtful eyes. He set the helmet on the seat of the bike and rested his hand lightly on the worn leather. For a few moments, the chaos of the event faded around him, as if time itself had slowed. The valet attendant walked toward him, slightly hesitant, as though unsure if the man needed help or belonged elsewhere. Keanu nodded politely, handing over nothing more than a small gesture of gratitude, because he would not be handing over the bike. He preferred to park it himself, to keep it within sight. Around him, couples exited their vehicles, their shoes clicking smartly on the stone path leading to the main doors. A woman in a sparkling silver gown stepped out of a sports car, glancing briefly at the motorcycle before leaning in to whisper something to her partner. A ripple of soft laughter carried on the breeze. Another group of men, adjusting their cufflinks, watched as Keanu calmly adjusted the straps on his backpack. His movements unhurried, his expression serene. One of them tilted his head and said just loud enough, "Guess someone got lost." His friends chuckled, shaking their heads as they moved on. Keanu did not notice, or perhaps simply did not care. He slid the key from the ignition and tucked it into his jacket pocket, his fingers brushing against the worn lining. The motorcycle, though old, was clean and cared for, its chrome catching the evening light like memories frozen in metal. People continued to pass, some sneaking glances, others ignoring him entirely, but a subtle murmur was building. He stood quietly, letting the cool air touch his face, and for a moment he closed his eyes, breathing in the faint scent of fuel and distant flowers carried on the breeze. This was not just transportation to him, it was something far deeper, though no one in the parking lot yet understood. The moment the sharp voice cut through the hum of conversation, even the valet's posture stiffened. "Oh my God, is that what you're driving?" The words came from a woman in a floor-length emerald dress, her jewelry catching the light with every exaggerated gesture. She was walking with two others, but her attention was locked on Keanu and his bike. "I mean, look at this thing," she said louder now, waving a manicured hand in his direction as her friends laughed uneasily. "Did you get lost on your way to a scrapyard? I didn't know they let whatever this is park here." A few people nearby turned their heads, curiosity flashing in their eyes, waiting for the stranger with the old bike to react. Keanu looked up from the helmet he had been adjusting, his calm eyes meeting hers without a flicker of anger. He didn't rush, didn't flinch, simply studied her as if her words were leaves blowing past in the wind. The woman smirked, emboldened by his silence. "What? Can't afford something decent? You do realize you're at an event for people who've actually made it, right?" Her companions exchanged glances, their laughter thinner now, unsure. Keanu stood quietly, his hand resting on the seat of the motorcycle, and for a long moment he simply observed her, as though measuring something far deeper than her words. The tension in the air thickened, and the parking lot seemed to hold its breath. Keanu's voice, when it came, was low and steady, carrying none of the hostility that had been thrown at him. "Do you know what makes something valuable?" he asked softly, his eyes still resting on the woman's. The question caught her off guard, her confident smile faltering. "Excuse me," she said, tilting her head. He stepped slightly closer to the bike, his hand brushing the handlebar with a gentleness that contrasted with the rough tone of her words. "Is it the price tag, the brand, or is it something else?" His words were calm, almost curious, as though he were genuinely inviting her to think rather than defend. The woman blinked, her mouth opening but no quick retort coming. Guests nearby began to slow their steps, drawn in by the unexpected tone of the exchange. Keanu's gaze dropped to the motorcycle, and his voice softened even further. "This bike has been with me longer than most things I own. It has carried me through nights when I had nowhere else to be. It's been with me on sets, through storms, through places you wouldn't believe. I rebuilt it with my own hands, part by part, because sometimes you keep something not because it's new, but because it means something." The woman's lips pressed together, her bravado thinning under the weight of his words. His tone never rose, never demanded, but it filled the space with a truth that no one could ignore. He let the silence stretch for a heartbeat before continuing. "You see scratches," he said quietly, running a thumb along a faded patch of paint. "I see miles and memories. You see an old machine. I see the nights I drove home after long shoots, the mornings I rode just to clear my head, the days when this was the only thing that felt real in a world that wasn't." His voice thickened slightly, just enough for those listening closely to feel it. "And if you think value is only in what's shiny and new, then maybe you've never held on to something because of the story it carries." The woman's shoulders dropped a fraction. Her friends exchanged uneasy looks, no longer laughing. People who had been walking past stopped fully now, pretending to check their phones while listening. Keanu met the woman's eyes one last time. Things don't need to be new to be priceless. Sometimes the old things carry more stories than gold ever could. He didn't sneer. He didn't smile with pride. He simply spoke as if stating a simple fact of life. Then he picked up his helmet, placed it gently on the bike, and turned as if to head toward the event entrance. The woman stood frozen, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and something else she couldn't quite name. The parking lot remained hushed, the hum of expensive cars now sounding hollow against the weight of his words. The bystanders' phones came up slowly, discreetly at first, then boldly as they realized they were witnessing something rare. A man in a suit whispered, "Wait, is that Keanu Reeves?" The ripple of recognition spread like wildfire through the small crowd. The woman in the emerald dress swallowed hard, her confidence crumbling as the realization dawned on her too. Keanu, however, didn't seem to notice or care. He simply adjusted the strap of his backpack, nodded politely to the valet, and began walking toward the doors. Someone called out his name softly, almost reverently. He glanced over with that same gentle expression, gave a small wave, and kept moving. The woman's friends shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very aware of the cameras now pointing in their direction. The entire moment, the mockery, the calm response, the stunned silence, had been caught on video by at least 3 people. Within minutes, those clips were uploaded, captions written in awe. Asterisk, he didn't insult her, he didn't yell. He just spoke the truth. Asterisk, guests who had looked at him as though he didn't belong now watched him go, their admiration quiet but deep. The woman turned away quickly, pretending to adjust her dress, but her hands trembled as she did. What had begun as an attempt to humiliate someone had ended in a lesson she would never forget. By the next morning, the video had spread across platforms like wildfire. Headlines appeared on trending pages. A woman mocked Keanu Reeves for driving an old motorcycle. His gentle reply went viral, comments poured in by the thousands. Strangers from around the world wrote about their own cherished old belongings. A grandfather's watch, a mother's ring, an old car that carried them through the hardest years. Others wrote about how they judged people too quickly, how they'd learned from Keanu's words. Clips of him standing calmly in that parking lot played over and over, shared with captions like "True class has nothing to do with what you own." Meanwhile, the woman in the emerald dress deleted her social media accounts, overwhelmed by the attention, but Keanu didn't post about it. He didn't seek to shame her further. He simply went on with his day, riding that same old motorcycle through quiet streets, the wind catching his long hair as the city blurred around him. Somewhere far away, a father taught his son about respect while watching the video. Somewhere else, a young woman decided to keep her grandmother's necklace despite its age. And in homes across the world, people repeated the lesson in whispers and nods. That value isn't measured in price tags, but in meaning. Keanu's calm reply had done what no flashy speech could have. It reminded people that true character is revealed not in what you drive or wear, but in how you treat others, even when they think you're nobody.